Hello, I'm Jeremy, and welcome to another episode of RevUs Reviews. There are many infamous faces in video game history. LJN, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the NES, E.T. for the Atari 2600, Charlie's Angels for the Nintendo GameCube, Action 52, Plumbers Don't Wear Ties, Superman 64. But out of all the infamous video game figures, the one that deserves that infamous title the least is, in my opinion, Bubsy Bobcat. Granted, Bubsy was responsible for one of the worst video games ever made, Bubsy 3D, but the character of Bubsy himself has way too much hate. I think he's a very fun, silly, cartoonish, and enjoyable character. On top of that, Bubsy was also responsible for one of my all-time favorite video games, Bubsy in Claws Encounters of the Third Kind. One of the main criticisms of Claws Encounters is that it's a ripoff of the original Sonic the Hedgehog games. I disagree. While the two games have some things in common, like the design of the final boss and the main character being an anthropomorphized running animal, Bubsy has enough differences from Sonic to qualify as its own game. In fact, Bubsy feels more like a spoof of the original Sonic games rather than a ripoff of them. The game has a very cartoonish vibe and very ridiculous enemies, which we'll get to later in the video. Also, the gameplay is really addictive and engaging. Claws Encounters is one of those games that feels really satisfying to play. The controls feel really smooth, and it's fun to jump around and glide. A lot of people rag on this game's hard gameplay, especially the falling damage. I honestly don't mind it. It's hard to get used to at first, but after a while, you adapt to it. And while I end up dying a lot when playing the game, Bubsy Claws Encounters of the Third Kind is so fun to play that it keeps me coming back, unlike Superman 64 and Jekyll and Hyde, which are so hard they're virtually unplayable. And now let's talk about the character of Bubsy. Many people say that Bubsy is incredibly annoying. In my opinion, the only time Bubsy was ever annoying was that terrible Bubsy TV pilot. Bubsy is a really fun, silly character with a lot of attitude. Also, unlike Mario and Sonic, who have perpetually blank, expressionless faces, Bubsy has a confident smirk, which exhibits a lot of personality, but not enough to feel completely disconnected from the player. I also like the little lines that Bubsy says in between levels. They're pretty funny and add a lot to Bubsy's character. Bubsy also has cool little death scenes, like when he drowns in the river, he puts on a naval hat and salutes as he drowns. And when he hits an enemy, he melts into a puddle of goo or shatters like glass. Also, if you play the game and don't move Bubsy around for a certain amount of time, Bubsy knocks on the screen, alerting the player to play the game. And as for Bubsy's gliding ability, honestly, who cares? Yes, it doesn't make sense, but A, this game is about an anthropomorphic bobcat wearing a shirt and no pants, trying to rescue the world's yarn from a bunch of aliens. I think this game is allowed to take some liberties with how animals work. And B, Bubsy's gliding skill is really helpful for getting across difficult terrain. So I don't really care about how it doesn't make sense. There's also these really fun water slides that help Bubsy get around. It's really fun seeing Bubsy ride around on these things, and I like the music that plays when you ride it. It's cool to listen to, and it's funny how the minute you get off the slide, it abruptly changes to the normal Bubsy theme. Finally, let's talk about the enemies. I'll only talk about the enemies from the first 3 levels because that's as far as I got. And because if I didn't, this video would be 3 hours long. The first level has the Woolies, which are both the lowest level enemies and the final boss of each level. The other enemies in this level are mostly made up of anthropomorphic objects such as a car, a piano, and a gumball machine. There's also a stupid-looking chicken who throws eggs at you and a series of trains who run you over. The second level is mainly made up of carnival food such as hot dogs and ice cream, although for some reason the ice cream only stuns you instead of hurting you. The third level is where the enemies get really interesting. This level has anthropomorphic tumbleweeds, trigger-happy gophers, sand sharks, spiky rock creatures, and turban-wearing lizards. In conclusion, Bubsy in Claws Encounters of the Furred Kind, while not without its flaws, is a fun, charming, creative, and challenging video game. Was this game intended to be a Sonic ripoff? Probably. But regardless, it's still a fun, enjoyable, and addictive game. And while the Bubsy franchise has had its ups and downs, I can at least still play this wonderful, fun, enjoyable video game. That's all for now. Join me next time when I talk about a John Landis comedy with aliens, military conspiracies, and Tom Arnold. See you then!